sources are telling me that one of the best bullpens in baseball somehow managed to get better this weekend.
Doesn't it feel like an eon since that trade's happened, too? That trade happened on Saturday, like 2 days ago at the time of recording this, 4 days ago at the time that this episode gets released. It feels like it was forever ago. I know we didn't do an emergency episode about it, but it feels like forever since we've hopped on this mic since the trade happened, because I feel like I've just been itching to talk about it. Now we're finally going to sit here and talk about it, because don't undersell this move, people. This is a big move that the Mariners made, because it's a move that makes their bullpen go from good to a legitimate threat, like a deadly threat.
And he honestly replaces what the Mariners lost in the Jorge Polanco trade just days earlier with Justin Topa. The more I look at Gregory Santos, which they acquired from the White Sox in exchange for Prelander Berroa, Zach DeLoach, and the 69th overall pick in this upcoming draft, you can trade compensatory draft picks, and that's what Jerry did to make this happen. Santos was expected to be the closer in Chicago this season. However, bad teams don't really need closers, which made him expendable. I don't know how many people thought he was going to be available, but man, oh man, according to our friends over at the Pinwheels and Ivy podcast, who wanted a synopsis on the trade from our side, Lyle went on with them earlier this offseason when he got dragged through the mud for his Luis Robert trade package idea. Went on there and sort of settled the water down with a lot of White Sox Nation, but they were mentioning to us, hey, like this guy Santos was supposed to be the closer this year for the White Sox, and it's a deadly combination. He's got a sinker that gets up over 100 miles an hour. He's got a slider that grades out run value wise as the second best slider in all of baseball, behind Clayton Kershaw. He's got a pretty good slider himself, and Kershaw threw over 300 more sliders than Santos did this past season, and he only had one more run value, and run value accumulates in volume, not on a rate basis. So that kind of tells you how good that pitch is. And the Mariners did it for trading a minor league reliever, a minor league outfielder, and a draft pick for him. And all of a sudden, that Justin Topa role, it seems like it's filled right back up again.
Gregory Santos is 24 years old. He has 5 years of club control. For people that are upset about losing Prelander Berroa, a guy who is essentially unproven, has barely thrown any big league innings, and even though he has high upside, is a guy that you hope becomes Gregory Santos. That's what everybody's saying, and I agree. The Mariners, if they kept Berroa, hoped he would turn into Gregory Santos. Instead, now they have Santos, and instead you just sacrifice 1 year of club control. Again, 5 years of control at 24 years old for a guy that has absolutely disgusting stuff like Santos does. You talked about the slider. He throws a sinker that was in year one of its debut. He had not thrown a sinker before this year. And it gets up to triple digits, often 101, 102 miles an hour. So you're throwing bullets like that at 101, 102, and then you're dropping in that deadly slider that not only misses a ton of bats, his slider gets up to 95 miles an hour. Paul Sewald's fastball basically topped out at 95 miles an hour. This guy is electric, dude.
Yeah. That's a pretty good way to put it. And just to remind people, Prelander Berroa is only 1 year younger than Gregory Santos. Prelander Berroa is 23 years old, and he was going to be making his full season debut with the Mariners this season. We assumed he's going to make his full season debut with the Mariners. Santos already has an entire year under his belt. So this will be the 2023 Gregory Santos year for Prelander Berroa on the South side. I don't know if that's a great comparison, though, Lyle, with saying it was really easy for people to throw around and say, hey, Santos is what Prelander Berroa wishes he's going to be at his peak in the big leagues. They're not really the same pitcher, to be honest. Santos has unbelievable stuff, but Prelander Berroa is the guy with the 37% strikeout rate in Double-A this year, while Santos was he's about a league average strikeout guy with below a better than league average walk rate at about 6%. Meanwhile, Berroa was walking over double that, 14.4% in Double-A this past season. It's not really an apples to apples comparison, but for what the Mariners have sort of archetyped their bullpen around, it fits right in. I mean, you got a sinker baller in Taylor Saucedo. Andres Munoz has transformed into a sinker baller, and the focus really of the Mariners bullpen last year especially was to not allow any home runs. Speaking of not allowing home runs, Lau, do you want to guess how many home runs the top three, the trio in the Mariners bullpen, Munoz, Brash, and now Santos, have combined to allow last year?
So the answer for Santos is 2. He does not give up home runs. He doesn't give up barrels, and we can get to that in a minute. But it's 2 for Santos. Brash, I'm going to say 4. And Munoz, I'm going to say 5. It's lower. Okay.
They gave up a combined, the three of them gave up a combined 7 home runs in 189 innings.
Wow. Yeah. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's hard to hit those dudes. I mean, is this bullpen going to be good?
The way to protect against volatility as a bullpen is to not give up home runs. Bullpens are notoriously year to year streaky. Guys will have bad years just out of nowhere. You know, a big reason why guys have bad years is because they let a couple balls go over the fence. Well, if you just don't allow any home runs, man, it's really hard to get blown up as a reliever, because odds are if you still have great stuff, then your stuff's going to win out if they can't just poke one over the wall.
So can I piggyback on that with Santos here? Because to read his full season numbers from 2023, his ERA was 3.39. It's a really good season for a reliever. But when you talk about not allowing home runs and all the expected stats that Santos held over the course of 23, it represents exactly that. Because all of his underlying numbers say he should have been even better than his 3.39 ERA. xERA 3.11, FIP 2.65, xFIP 3.31, Sierra 3.32. So all those numbers say for as good as Santos was, he actually should have been even better. And a lot of that forms from, he didn't give up a lot of home runs. So the things that were in his control, he did to the pinpoint of his ability.
Do you know how many extra base hits he gave up on his slider this past year?
He gave up 1 home run on his slider, right? Just 1, I want to say. Oh, he didn't give up any.
He gave up 1 double on his slider this year. He allowed on his slider a 196 batting average and a 203 slug.
That's so wild.
And we talk about the sinker as being the pitch that doesn't allow extra base contact. Well, his slider actually flat out didn't allow anything, period. The only thing you could do with his slider is hit it for a base hit. That's it. Period. And now he's going to go to a pitching development staff that has worked miracles on some of these relievers over the past 2 seasons to form what is arguably the best bullpen in baseball. It is crazy. The imagination is crazy of what the Mariners could do with this guy this upcoming season. What kind of tweaks would they want to make with his slider? What about his sinker? A pitch that, again, he was just trying to feel out this year. And Jason Benetti went on Brock and Salk today to talk about this, today being Monday. And Benetti, he's now the voice of the Tigers, but he called games for the White Sox last season and was up close and personal watching Gregory Santos out of the bullpen. A couple of really just amazing things came out of that conversation, I thought. First off, like he mentioned, he's like, crazy how efficient a guy can be when he's literally just trying to learn that pitch. He spent last year, he ditched his four-seamer because the pitching coach who was in San Francisco with him came over to Chicago with Santos. And they're like, all right, Santos, I don't really love your four-seam fastball. Let's have you learn to throw a sinker. And that's essentially what he spent last year doing. And then second, I know he only had a 6% walk rate, but Benetti goes, he wasn't even very good ahead of hitters. I think his control and command can be way better. With a 6% walk rate that's already there, that's pretty crazy. And last thing, the quote that left a memorable impression with me, he made some of the best hitters in baseball look scared at the plate.
Luis Arraez doesn't strike out ever. And what did Gregory Santos do in year 1 of learning a sinker? He threw 101 down and away to Luis Arraez and made him look stupid on a strikeout. Arraez doesn't strike out. He doesn't strike out, period. But he did against Santos. And to your point about the slider, this is why Santos is primarily a slider first reliever. He throws his slider more than any other pitch. He throws it just over 52% of the time. Sinker comes next, which is normal, as everybody knows nowadays in baseball. You don't have to throw your fastball as your primary pitch. Throw your best pitch that's your primary pitch. Sometimes that's the case with starters too, but that's certainly the case with Santos. We should contextualize his sinker a little bit because you're talking about how it was a pitch he was learning. As he was learning it, while the actual velocity on it is very good, it did get hit around a little bit last year, and this is the one kind of downside with Santos's arsenal. Now, before I even read it out, he may just totally have a 180 this upcoming year, learning with the Mariners staff and getting a new change of scenery. It could be amazing this year. In 2023, opponents hit 343 against the sinker. That's high. That doesn't change the fact that he had a great year overall, but with that pitch, there's still things he needs to learn and kind of feel out the tweaks for. But you know what? I wouldn't be shocked at all if come 2024, both those pitches are just nasty.
And sinkers aren't really supposed to be a swing and miss pitch. Like, if we're thinking about this, I wouldn't be shocked if Santos stays as sort of a 22, 23, 24% strikeout guy, because in the end, he's trying to generate ground balls, and that's what Topa did so well. I wouldn't be overly shocked if that slider becomes like a 2022 Andres Munoz slider and just decimates opponents. But I think a realistic way to look at this is saying, sure, he could be significantly more effective on the mound for the Mariners. I just don't know if that's going to come in the form of strikeouts. I think it might come more in the form of a Justin Topa level of just pure run prevention and just throwing a wet blanket on whoever's at the plate, because his sinker, while it's hittable, meaning you can put the bat on it, you're not going to do anything with it once you actually hit the baseball.
It may not come through strikeouts, but the run value on it last year was -8. It can improve. And it probably will, because again, he's thrown it for one season. So I think it will improve. And I'm sure the Mariners think it will improve. That's the other part of this too, right? When the trade went down, there was a select group of people, and of course you shouldn't judge how people feel online for the most part, but there were people saying, why did they go out and give up Baroa? Why did they go out and trade for a bullpen arm? Why didn't they just either sign somebody or stick with the knowledge they have and keep these guys that they just find for league minimum and turn them into good relievers? Guys, don't you think if the Mariners of all teams, who have been just impeccable with reliever development, don't you think if they're identifying this guy to go out and trade for, you'd have to think they believe he is going to be not just good, but probably elite. Otherwise, they're not giving up all these guys for a reliever. But to have 5 years of control for a 24-year-old with this type of stuff, I trust. How could you not trust the Mariners at this point to believe what they're seeing in Santos and say, yeah, this guy's going to be a weapon for us?
And I don't know. I don't really understand holding on to Prelander Baroa when you see what the Mariners can do with relievers. Like, you're like, okay, well, Baroa looks great in the minor leagues. They've still been, again, the Mariners have been frustrated, and they've shown their frustration with his inability to control the strike zone. Like, he would have been up last year, Lyle, if he could throw more strikes and not walk a bunch of guys. Like I think that's pretty simple, right? He still ended up walking over 14% of his batters last season. If that's below 10%, he's a big leaguer last year. And the Mariners don't have as much bullpen struggle down the stretch because they have another lockdown arm in the bullpen, but they couldn't do that because they didn't trust him. And I don't know if they trusted him any more now than they did back in August and September of last season when they really needed that help. So what's a great way to fix that? If someone else thinks they can do something with him, like the Chicago White Sox, you make the best of the situation, you wish him well, and he's going to get all the opportunity in the world to work out all of his problems at the big league level next year in perhaps leverage situations, because the White Sox don't really have much else. They had Gregory Santos and they didn't have much else, especially with Liam Hendricks on the shelf. So it's good for him. And it's also good for the Mariners that they get someone who they feel like is a little more proven and a little bit more ready to slide into a role that they feel like has been left in their bullpen, in that void that Justin Topa left. And they insert someone right in with Gregory Santos, who has better stuff than Justin Topa does.
Yeah, this is really exciting. Also, I wouldn't be shocked if Baroa's closing games by the end of the year for the White Sox, maybe halfway through the season. That has to be one of the worst bullpens in baseball, the White Sox. Like,
yeah, I wouldn't be shocked either. And Zach DeLoach probably going to get a good chunk of playing time with the White Sox. They don't have the outfield depth, especially in the sort of style that DeLoach was stuck behind Cade Marlowe and Taylor Trammell and Dom Canzone in the Mariners organization. I mean, seriously, like Cade Marlowe, Taylor, and Zach DeLoach were all sort of in the same mold of outfielder, where it was like somewhere between AAA and the major leagues, left-handed hitting, above average power, strikeout problems, could play multiple positions in the outfield. And I mean, that he was last on that list. So he's going to go to Chicago, and he's probably going to play a little bit more. Thankfully, Lyle, there were enough rational people online that I didn't see people be like, we're giving up on Zach DeLoach already?
Yeah. Even you talk about those three. If you want to look at the Mariners' entire outfield depth as a whole, it just felt like DeLoach was stuck. So you take all the starters. You have Julio, you have Haniger, you have Raley, you have Dom Canzone, you have Marlowe, you have Trammell. That's 6 guys ahead of them. And then if you factor in not the platoon guys, if you factor in the utility guys and Demo and Sam Haggerty, there's a lot of guys ahead of Zach DeLoach that are playing the outfield. It made sense to give him a new opportunity, especially if you're going to get an arm that's this good out of the bullpen in Gregory Santos.